There was once a boy named Eli. He wasn't born broken. He wasn't born angry or lost. Like every child, he came into the world with wonder in his eyes, always curious, always asking why, always dreaming in colors. But the world did not care for him the way he needed. His father came home late, carrying rage louder than his footsteps. His mother disappeared into silence. Eli learned to walk on tiptoes, memorizing every creak in the floorboards as if they were landmines. The dinner table became a battlefield where words flew like knives and apologies never came. But what scarred him the most wasn't the chaos, it was the denial. The forced smiles in public, the silence after the storm, the way no one dared to say, "Something's wrong here." That denial, that gaslighting of reality itself, was the real poison. Because yes, the human mind is resilient, but it is not unbreakable. Trauma doesn't just sit in memory. It embeds in the body. It rewires the nervous system, reshapes how you see the world, others, and most tragically yourself. It teaches a child that they are not safe, not worthy, not real. And as that child grows, the mask grows with him. Eli became charming, funny. He learned how to read people, to shapeshift into whatever they needed. He became a master at it. Yet underneath, he was hollow, like a room abandoned after a firewall still standing, but the soul gone. That is what unprocessed trauma does. It splits the self. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." Eli inherited that tragedy, not just in genetics, but in silence, in suppression, in the cold legacy of emotional neglect. He didn't break all at once. It started with sleepless nights, with the haunting feeling that something was always wrong, even when everything seemed fine. Then came the paranoia, the rage, the self-hatred. He couldn't trust anyone, not even himself. Relationships became landmines. He would push people away, then beg them to stay. Love turned into a battlefield where he played both soldier and saboteur. He tried therapy once, told the therapist he couldn't feel anything, that his dreams didn't make sense, that sometimes he didn't even recognize the man staring back in the mirror. They called it anxiety, depression. But labels couldn't touch the real monster, the buried pain he had never learned to speak. Because when trauma is ignored, it doesn't vanish. It hides, it festers, it waits. And one day, it comes out, maybe as a breakdown, maybe as addiction, maybe in the sudden silence of someone who used to laugh the loudest. For Eli, it began with conversations with himself, not just passing thoughts, but arguments, screams. He walked past mirrors without blinking. He carried a notebook filled with scribbles no one else could understand. Friends said he changed, but the truth was, he had simply run out of energy to hide it. That's what no one tells you about going crazy. It isn't madness, it's exhaustion. The soul giving up the performance. When a person spends their whole life suppressing wounds and fears, eventually the psyche fractures. Because the human mind is not a machine. It's a fragile tapestry of memories, emotions, beliefs, and meaning. And when too much of that tapestry is soaked in pain and silence, it begins to tear. Eli started believing the voices. He saw patterns in everything. He thought the universe was speaking directly to him, not metaphorically, but literally. Every radio ad, every glance from a stranger, every flicker of light became a message. His starved mind was creating order out of chaos, trying to make sense of what was never resolved. That's the cruel trick of unhealed trauma. It never lets you rest. It never lets you forget. It disguises itself as anxiety, as rage, even as mystical insight. But beneath it all is a child screaming, "Please notice me. Save me. Help me." By then, it's too late, because the world does not understand madness. It fears it. It turns it into a spectacle. Eli became another cautionary tale, another statistic, another whispered. What went wrong? He didn't go crazy because he was weak. He went crazy because he was strong for too long. Eli's truth was brutal. He was abused. He was neglected. He was never seen for who he really was. For years, he told himself it didn't matter. But it did. It always did. Carl Jung believed that healing begins when the unconscious is made conscious. That looking into your darkness, instead of running from it, is the beginning of redemption. But looking into the past means feeling everything you've tried so hard not to feel. And beneath the numbness, beneath the madness, is something even scarier: vulnerability. You have to grieve. And grief is its own kind of death. Eli began to write. Not for clarity, not even for healing, but to let it out. His pages filled with chaos, scribbles, sometimes just the same sentence over and over. I didn't deserve this. That sentence didn't bring peace. It brought permission. Permission to be angry. Permission to be sad. Permission to feel. And in that rawness, he stumbled on something he hadn't touched in years: hope. Healing doesn't begin with motivation or positive thinking. It begins with honesty. And honesty is born in pain. Eli went back to therapy, but this time he didn't try to be impressive or spiritual or strong. He just wept for the child who grew up too fast, for the adult who never felt safe, for the madness that finally made sense once he stopped running. He wasn't cured, but he wasn't lost anymore. He learned that madness was never the enemy. It was a message. A cry for attention from the parts of himself he had locked away. And when he finally opened the door, those parts didn't destroy him. They thanked him, because at last he was listening. If you've ever felt like you're going crazy, if the world feels too loud, and you feel too broken, remember this: you are not broken, you are buried. And healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the pain taught you to forget. How do you begin? You begin with silence. Not the silence of disconnection, but the silence of listening. Write, scream, walk, cry. But do it consciously. Do it without shame. Because healing isn't about hiding. It's about facing what lives beneath the surface. Real healing doesn't come from quick fixes. It comes from courage. The courage to ask the hard questions, to face the shadows, to admit the pain you've carried for too long. And in that process, Eli discovered the truth. You don't heal to become perfect. You heal to become real. To finally look into the mirror and recognize the person staring back. Because the world doesn't need more masks. It needs more people who have faced their shadow and returned stronger, wiser, and alive with truth.